The US Food and Drug Administration approved US drug maker Gilead's antiviral therapy remdesivir, making it the first drug to obtain formal clearance for treating the coronavirus. Remdesivir works by blocking viruses from making copies of themselves. US FDA said it based its approval on 3 randomized controlled clinical trials that included patients hospitalized with mild to severe COVID-19. Regulators had granted an emergency use authorization for remdesivir earlier this year, and since then the drug has become a widely used therapy in hospitalized COVID-19 patients. It was given to President Donald Trump also this month when he was diagnosed with the virus. In a World Health Organization trial, the medicine failed to reduce fatalities, and according to the preliminary results, it did not reduce hospital stay as well. Despite contradictory results of the trial, US has given approval to the drug, making it the first drug to have the final nod. Now, to talk to us more about this and what exactly this means, Dr. Yatin Mehta joins us. He's the chairman of Medanta Institute of Critical Care. Dr. Mehta, remdesivir, we just saw about 2 weeks back, or I believe a week back, WHO said that they are not getting good results out of remdesivir. And now we hear US giving that approval, the FDA giving the final nod. How do you see this?
See, I mean, although I use remdesivir quite a lot on patients in the intensive care unit, and most of the intensivists are using that, the solidarity trial by the WHO, which was published, was a negative trial. That means it did not show any benefit out of the 4 drugs which were tested of remdesivir. Neither did it improve mortality, nor did it reduce the ICU and hospital length of stay. So it was a negative trial. But from the science point of view, there are a lot of flaws in the large 11,000 patient multinational trial. India also participated, many hospitals participated. So, I mean, I will not go into details of what are the flaws in the study, but few other studies on basis of which the FDA has approved for regular use as a therapy have shown reduced hospital length of stay, none of which have shown reduction in mortality.
Okay.
To be honest, most of the new drugs or new therapies, the intensive care sick patients are not able to show significant mortality benefit because the number of patients required to show the benefit would be tens of thousands.
Right. Doctor, as a person who's using this drug, how do you feel about this drug? Do you trust it? Do you feel that it's been effective?
Yes, but it is not a magic drug.
Of course.
Which will cure the disease. You give it and patient gets all right. It's not. It's an expensive drug. I use it for moderate to severe cases, not for mild cases. So it's not a therapy for everybody.
Right.
And it's not going to may not change mortality. It may reduce the intensity.
Doctor, there is also one worry, now that it has its final approval from US FDA. Now, in states like Maharashtra, they have capped the cost of it. But we've seen earlier that there has been black marketing as far as remdesivir is concerned, because there is very critical shortage of it globally, not just in India. In India, it's of course much more. So do you think this could affect the way people perceive the drug and there could be more clamoring for the drug?
I sincerely hope not, although in the last couple of months, several Indian pharma companies have started manufacturing. So we had a transient shortage for a while when a lot of black market was happening. But now I see no shortage. It's freely available and we are using it freely. And the prices also have come down, and I expect it to come down even more. But although, can I just elaborate a little about this FDA approval? See, from the experimental use, so it was being used on experimental basis. That means you will take consent from the patient's relatives, which we have still been doing here in India also. They were regular use, authorized for regular use. So the difference is not too much. You only won't need the consent to use it, and possibly more people will use it. There may be political reasons for all these sort of things. Because, elections are coming. We know how politicians now are talking about vaccines and plasma therapy and this drug being efficacious. So there's a lot of politics in it.
Right. Also, doctor, as long as emergency approval is there, it can be revoked after the pandemic is under control or, after it is over. But what about the final nod? What does it actually mean for the drug?
It means that the drug is going to be used more extensively. And probably Gilead will make a lot of more profit.
Right. And they are claiming that they will be able to produce that many doses as needed. But do you foresee globally a kind of a increased use? Because most countries will, see this as a positive note for the drug. If US FDA is approving it, it is kind of like, something that you look up to, the FDA approval.
Absolutely. I mean, see, FDA approval is taken as a gospel truth.
Yeah.
The Bible, in India, particularly in India. So, which it may not be. I mean, there are quite a lot of other drugs, antibiotics, which are used in Europe for the last 10 years, but they are not FDA approved. So, it doesn't really mean too much, but the use will certainly go up.
Right. Thank you very much, doctor. Quite interesting there that this drug that was, being used for a very long time now has finally got the final approval. Thank you very much for speaking with us, but we will keep an eye on the fact whether this approval has any impact in India, because in India this drug was already hard to come by and we had seen black marketing of this drug. Now, moving on to some other news, another big news from the world of health services, healthcare. IAVI, which is a non-profit scientific research organization dedicated to addressing urgent and unmet global health challenges, and Pune-based Serum Institute of India have announced an agreement with Merck to develop SARS-CoV-2 neutralizing monoclonal antibodies. The monoclonal antibodies garner headlines after a cocktail of these antibodies was administered to the US President Donald Trump, and later he called it a cure. He gave out a soundbite saying this is the thing that cured him. These antibodies are an experimental and a very, very expensive treatment. This deal may lead to making this expensive treatment accessible to all and not just rich countries. It is, of course, subject to the results of the clinical trials that will happen later. Now, a statement has been issued by Adar Poonawalla, who is the CEO of Serum Institute, and it is regarding the monoclonal antibodies, which he says will be made globally accessible. He said, I am extremely pleased that we have joined forces with IAVI and Merck in the fight against COVID-19 with the aim to developing monoclonal antibodies for global access. Given the breadth and scale of our technology and our long-standing devotion to improving health, especially in low-income countries, I am confident that we and our partners are on a productive path that will lead to a much-needed, globally available tool for COVID-19 treatment and possibly prevention. So it's very important here that the fact these monoclonal antibodies, which are considered an experimental and an extremely expensive treatment, might be available in countries like India also. Now, to talk about that, we have Dr. Dilip Mavalankar with us. He is the head and director of the Indian Institute of Public Health. From Gandhinagar, he joins us. Thank you very much, Dr. Mavalankar, for this. It's always a worry for countries like India that when there is an expensive treatment, it doesn't reach our country, And now this particular agreement between these three agencies could mean that this experimental yet expensive treatment might one day be available in India if it gets approved.
Yes, Anjali, this is a very, very good news. And as we have done in the HIV/AIDS field, India reduced the global prices of HIV treatment when it started manufacturing through many companies, including Cipla, and the whole global pricing structure transformed. So this can be similar game-changing effort. Of course, initially the treatments will be expensive because there will be a lot of testing needs to be done. It has to be still proved that it will work. It is a very delicate and complicated technology, which fortunately this three-way partnership between Global AIDS Vaccine Institute and Serum Institute is developing, which will bring to us, and if we are able to successfully try it out and manufacture on large scale, the prices will definitely go down. And it will be very, very useful therapy if it comes. Of course, initially, as I said, the prices might be high. We have to work out the patenting mechanism. Serum Institute being an Indian company, they may give us in India much favorable prices with their ability to sell across world. They might be able to cross-subsidize that. And in the cancer field, such monoclonal antibodies, which are still quite expensive, but prices have come down after some time. So it's, I think, a very good news.
Absolutely. Dr. Mavlankar, you know, this concept is fairly new to the people of India. They're hearing more about it now that, you know, it was suddenly made famous by Mr. Trump when he mentioned this is the cure. Of course, you know, we cannot call it a cure and we still have to see clinical trials. But, you know, the fact that monoclonal antibodies could be one of the most effective treatments is kind of coming through from various treatments and various trials.
Yeah, so the way these antibodies work is that when the infection happens, the body makes many different types of antibodies.
Right.
And two different proteins which are enveloping the virus or covering the virus. And what is seen in this virus is only few of the antibodies which can block the spike protein of the virus, can block the virus entry into the body, and if it entry into the cells, and that happens, then the virus cannot multiply and can be destroyed by the body. So we have to sort of understand the complexity of that and see, and there are companies which have already made such 1, 2, sometimes they make 3, a combination or cocktail, so that the spike proteins are more effectively blocked. And that is where this whole effort is, to develop such specific antibodies which will block the certain sites on the spike protein which allow the virus to enter the cells. And if that is successful and if they can make it, of course the technology is quite, as I said, complex, but it has been done in cancer and many other areas. And it's not it's new, but it's not that new. For last several years, this type of monoclonal antibodies are available. So I think it will be very useful, and if it is successful, then it would be game-changing.
And also the relevance of these antibodies, if they are made and available commercially, is beyond the availability of vaccine. Even if the vaccine comes in, you do need a treatment as well.
Yeah, sure. Those who get it, because vaccine, even if it comes, it may not be completely effective.
That's true.
Just day before yesterday, I think one of the vaccine trial participants died. So even if there is 50-70% effective vaccine, there may be 30 to 50% people, in spite of vaccine, will develop disease.
Right.
And there, this type of therapy, which is highly specific, may be very useful.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for speaking with the NDTV. So this is big news that has come in, and that is that even countries like India or any low-income countries will also have access to expensive treatment like monoclonal antibodies when they get approval, thanks to Serum India. We're going to take a very short break. When we come back, we'll get you some international coronavirus-related news as well. Welcome back. Can we predict who is most at risk of long COVID? A new analysis by researchers at King's College London claimed to do so. Now, it shows that 1 in 20 people with COVID-19 are likely to suffer symptoms for 8 weeks or more. This study focused on data from 4,182 COVID symptom study app users who had been consistently logging their health and tested positive for COVID-19 through swab PCR testing. The team found that older people, women, and those with a greater number of different symptoms in the first week of their illness were more likely to develop long COVID. Now, to talk about this study, we are joined by Dr. Claire Steeves, who is a consultant geriatrician and also the senior clinical lecturer and research lead for this COVID symptom study. Dr. Steeves, thank you very much for speaking with NDTV. What are the key findings of your study?
Well, as you said, one of the things that we did with this study was we got an idea of the size of the problem with long COVID, and it does affect a significant number of people. Then secondly, we wanted to describe what does long COVID actually look like? And we found two clusters of symptoms that people with long COVID suffer from. One which is mainly respiratory, associated with some headache, and another which was really a very multi-system problem. People having problems with the heart and the brain and the tummy even for quite a long time after COVID-19. And then as you said in your intro, we did look at how you could predict COVID, long COVID, and we found that symptoms in the first week can actually be helpful in predicting. So we think this could be very helpful for early preventative trials.
Right. Dr. Steeves, did your analysis find there was more risk for women or older people?
Absolutely. So we found that women had a slightly increased risk of having long COVID, about 15% of women at that 8-week mark versus 10%, less than 10% of men. But also people who are over 50 really had an increased risk of long COVID.
Right. Dr. Steeves, do you plan to submit your study for peer review as well?
Yes, absolutely. We've submitted it for peer review already as we, at the same time as we put it out to preprint. In this new world of COVID research, we are disseminating results quite early because they're clearly very useful for planners and to drive the science forward.
Right. If we talk about long COVID, when the normal person wants to understand what long COVID means, because many think once you've tested negative, you are done with coronavirus. Could you explain to our viewers what long COVID means?
So in our analysis, what long COVID to us meant persisting symptoms. So indeed, you might have a swab test that went negative, but you still might have symptoms on a daily basis. So we classified, defined long COVID as persistent symptoms for more than 28 days, that's long COVID 28, or more than 56 days, so that's more than 8 weeks. And then, of course, people do also suffer from relapses of symptoms after being healthy again. And though that's increased if you had longer persistent symptoms to start with.
Right. What kind of burden does it put on the healthcare system, the long COVID? Because we are believing that these people have recovered and they're ready to go home. But then we have some of those people coming back into the health system.
That's right. We found about 40% of people with long COVID were going back to having a hospital assessment, but they weren't necessarily staying in. But the main burden is that when you have long COVID with fatigue and severe headache going on for several months, it's quite difficult to get back into the workforce. It's also difficult to care for children and older relatives. So it will have a significant social and economic impact because it's affecting quite a large number of people at one time.
Right. And what does this mean for people who think, let me get over with COVID. If I get exposed to it, at least I'll be done with it. I'm young, I'm healthy, I might just suffer some mild symptoms and I might be okay. What does this mean for those people? Because this is a risk they don't account for.
Yes, so it is true that most people get better within 12 days. But even in young people, even in the people in their 20s in our study, about 10% of them went on to get symptoms for longer than 8 weeks, for longer than 4 weeks, sorry. So it is still an issue for young people. So I think that's a really important message to get out, to make sure that young people also socially distance, make sure they wear their masks and be careful not to spread the virus around. It will also affect them in some numbers.
Right. Lastly, I'd like to ask you about the people who were part of your study, because you depended a lot on the people themselves for them to report their symptoms and contribute in the study.
Yes, that's right. We're extremely grateful to the contributors, because for this study, we needed people to be reporting back to us on their symptoms at least once or twice a week for us to be able to tell how long they were having symptoms. So it's quite a significant burden on people to keep reporting. But in the UK, this app has been very widely used because we're able to give such good understanding of COVID in the UK using the app. So that's encouraged people to keep logging.
Thank you, Dr. Steve, for speaking with NDTV. And we hope people understand the importance of saving yourself from COVID, because long COVID is something that will tag along with you for a very long time.